All right, hello Honors 100. So for today's video lecture, I'm going to be focusing pretty squarely on the Wendy S. Walters essay that was assigned for today. So to give a little bit of context for this, because the Hurricane Sandy that she's referencing in this piece, I know it was quite some time ago now, and it wasn't immediately in the Las Vegas area. I'm expecting it's not super familiar to most of you beyond just kind of the general sense of hurricanes and mass storms and disasters and so on and so forth. So I'm going to include a video clip below of just some YouTube footage of kind of news coverage related to Hurricane Sandy, just to get a little bit more of a feel. I think the essay does convey a fair bit of kind of what it was like to be in that storm, but sometimes seeing it and kind of hearing news coverage of it offers just a little wider lens into that. So you can check that out below. But for this piece itself, I'll say that there's a handful of things that really interest me on a broad level related to this essay. So one of them is the way in which Walters plays with language, and specifically the meanings of words. She brings up a number of examples throughout the piece. I think the one that grabs my attention the most is the skyscraper, and saying that while we think of that, of course, as a building and these tall buildings in a city sense ordinarily, that originated as a sea term, right? As kind of those ships that where the top mast would raise so high that it would scrape the sky or would appear to would touch the clouds. And so I think that this sense of things changing meaning, right, and words changing meaning, I think is kind of at the heart of this essay, beyond the content about storms and water itself. And so I'm curious as to the class's reaction. Any thoughts you all might have about changing meanings of words? Have we encountered this? There's another example of this in talking about ship and its multiple meanings. This comes up on page 191. And I'm curious in general about why we think that this is so important kind of in a discussion about this scene of mass chaos. What is Walter saying about kind of the changing of words, changing of meanings, so on and so forth? There's another image that I'm super interested in, just on page 187, about the Statue of Liberty, right? Where Walters writes that it's as if it's looking out for help to come from the sea, which is sort of the opposite of what we conventionally think of when we think of the image of the Statue of Liberty. And I'm talking about the one that's over in New York, not necessarily the one that's on the Las Vegas Strip outside the New York casino. But it's usually that the Statue of Liberty is seen as sort of this symbol of hope, this symbol of freedom, that it's looking out to sea, not because it's looking for help, but because it's sort of welcoming immigrants in, right? At least that's the most traditional application of that image. And so the idea that it too is looking out to sea for help, this goes back to that discussion of changing meanings, in this case of a symbol or a structure, but also just sort of this sense of kind of disarray, chaos, hopelessness, that a symbol of hope itself is looking for help from somewhere else. That's kind of powerful, I think. It has a lot to say. Walters also gets into this discussion of New York itself, and about that's more of a concept than a fixed place, which I think is pretty interesting. And I'm curious if the class has any thoughts on that. How can a place be not so much a fixed thing, a fixed location, as a concept? And is there a concept of other places as well? So Walters makes the case for New York. I would suggest that might apply to Las Vegas in some ways as well, that it's not so much that it's about it being here specifically in the desert, in Nevada. I think those factors do inform what Las Vegas is and how it's sort of executed, so to speak. But I think the argument could also be made Las Vegas is more of an idea, more of a concept. And so I'll leave that kind of as a little bit of an open-ended question as well, in terms of what we think in terms of how a place can be a concept, and again, how that might apply to other places, including Las Vegas, where we all are. Let's see. Otherwise, so this collage style that I would say that this essay is written in. So when I say collage style, I don't mean physically a traditional collage where we cut out pictures and paste them on poster board all together, that sort of thing, but rather this sense of really separate pieces, right? So in a more traditional kind of straightforward essay, we just get the story, right? So someone is just writing a story for us from beginning to end of their personal experience or something that happened. The way that this is told, we jump around in time, we jump around in kind of concepts that we're talking talking about, to the most immediate experience of the author and other people in New York, during this catastrophic storm, to talking about water more broadly and the sea and kind of the history of words. And so I'm curious about the effect of all of these different pieces coming together, and why we think that Walters would write the piece this way. Because I think this is a very specific choice based on what she's writing about. I've mentioned this concept a few times throughout class, but the idea that form can follow function. So the way that something is written says something about the thing that's being written about. I think that that's certainly a case for this particular essay. With that, I'll go ahead and leave the rest of the discussion pretty open-ended. So feel free to comment on any of the questions or points that I've raised in this short lecture. And also feel free to turn to the text itself for other things that stood out to you, other things that you were starting to journal about in your reading and response journals, anything else that kind of caught your attention or was of interest to you, or maybe you have questions around. So we are getting to the point where obviously we're thinking about our own creative nonfiction pieces. And again, I share this piece as well as a number of the other ones we're reading around this point of the semester, in no small part to kind of just give you some other options of ways of thinking about this assignment and how you might approach your own creative nonfiction. So maybe also be considering, either for the purposes of our discussion or just more broadly for yourself as you're thinking about the assignment, how might you emulate this style, or what might you borrow from this essay to kind of inform your own work? All right, so thanks as always for watching, and I'll catch you next time.